We are live now.
Thank you, Maria. Hi, everyone. Happy Monday. So we start the week with another fantastic episode of VCTV, the Venture Capital TV from La Token. So today we have interesting topic on education tech and WorkTech. And we're going to discuss the investments around the space. Today we have two fabulous speakers, one from Nigeria and another one from India. Hey guys, how are you?
Good evening. Good to be here.
Thank you. So we have Sean Burrows from Nigeria, originally American, and Misha from Mumbai, India. Hello, guys. So I would like to start with a short introduction about each of you, like what you do in the space. Then we go over to the questions. Sean, can you just start with a short intro about yourself, please?
Awesome. My name is Sean, as she said before. I work in the tech space, but I'm not necessarily a tech person. But what I love what we're doing with the aggressive umbrella of companies is that we are building a pipeline that starts with SS3 or high school graduation and takes a African youth all the way to follow-on startup funding. We do that with the Aggressive for Good Foundation, where we train and help place technical talent. We do it with aggressive advisory by bringing in investment companies and global tech companies to understand the market and how they penetrate it. And we do it with the VC, where we have raised a $10 million fund to invest in early stage African startups.
Oh, excellent. That was quick and short. Thank you.
Oh, I can extend it.
Yeah. We'll give the opportunity. We have two speakers today, so you have a lot of time to talk. Thank you, Sean. Over to you, Nimisha.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Nimisha Nagarsekar. I work with Sixth Sense Ventures, which is India's first domestic consumer-centric venture fund. I love the consumer space because it's something which all of us touch and feel every day, right? So we're almost a $125 million fund. We invest across education, fitness, health, wellness, supply chain, logistics. Very interesting set of investments in the fund. Today I would like to talk about one of my first deals in the venture fund, which was in the education space. And so as Sonny takes it forward, we'll speak more about it.
Excellent. Thank you. That's where our viewers are going to be interested in. Thank you, Nimisha, for that short intro. Okay, now we have the questions. I'd like to ask Sean first. Sean, like you work with a lot of startups, you work with a lot of, you now obviously have a fund. So tell me, like what were your recent investments made during the COVID-19? Like the lockdown happened in March, I guess. What happened? How did you manage through the investments?
So on the investment space, we shifted gears totally. We went from putting a lot of time, energy, and effort into finding out who are the sharp guys, who are the ones that are leading the way, who are separating themselves from the pack, who are basically creating opportunities that have a global appeal that can get the returns that we're looking for, of course. But once COVID struck, we shifted gears and started focusing on saying, like, how can we support our portfolio companies? What are the things we can do to get them more visible? Where are the holes in their strategy? Now we kind of went through and kind of like went through all of their business plans, remapped out all of their financials, and did all of these different things for each single one of our, I was gonna say customers, but companies. And basically, it was a really difficult process. We're still doing a lot of that every single day, but I think it's worthwhile, and we're definitely getting positive feedback from not only our portfolio companies, but the community. And with that being said, one of the most recent investments we made was actually in 54 Gene. The exact details escape me of the size, but 54 Gene basically was covered in Times Magazine. But basically, they're focusing on kind of like genetic engineering and different things like that. And what it is we've been talking to that company probably on and off for the last year and a half. But now in these COVID times, now you're starting to realize the power of anything related to like the health tech, as well as WorkTech and EduTech as well. But that was one of our first plays in basically kind of stepping outside of what we would say is a traditional business, African business sector, and actually start getting into something that was purely cutting edge, something that we didn't have a lot of background data on to understand exactly how it plays. But we understood that what they represented and what they were doing was very much still needed. We also invested in Swipe, which is a payment platform. Again, payment. It's a major issue within the African continent. There's a lot of conversations, or what we like to call the belle of the ball, which is financial technologies. But as it stands now, what we are really focusing on is remittance. We're trying to find ways to send money from one place to another, but we haven't necessarily cracked the code of financial technology, which would give you the capabilities of a Plaid to create like a TurboTax and different things like that plugs into different APIs to basically provide you the information you need to make certain business decisions. So we're still pushing and fighting to get to that place. And we feel like Swipe is definitely a strong step in that direction.
Oh, so yeah.
Kind of, I think, did you ask kind of, well, I'll just leave it there for now, and then maybe I can follow up after Nimisha.
Yes, Sean. For financial inclusion, I'm going to touch base on a few topics later on crypto, like obviously remittances and fintech. Thank you, Sean, to start that off. Nimisha, over to you. I remember like we were having a chat, we were discussing about the startup that we just invested. So we'd like to know more from you.
Yeah. Just to add to what Sean was saying, from a mindset which was just wanting to look at newer and fresher deals and exciting opportunities out there. Once COVID set in, the first thing that was there in everybody's mind was how do we ensure that the current companies survive, have enough runway and capital till the next funding round eventually evolves for them, because we don't see that happening too soon. Worked very closely with them for ensuring that cost reductions are in place or getting them geared up for newer opportunities. So in the consumer space, we could categorically segment these companies into 2-3 buckets. Some companies which were into the fitness, the wellness space. For example, we have investment in one of the companies called Fastena, and they are largely into effervescence, active life, vitamin C, reload, sports nutrition tablets. They immediately saw a 5x jump in the sales during COVID times, because everybody wanted to latch on to immunity and ensure that they have the right nutrients out there in their bodies, right? Companies like that, companies which were more into the D2C online space, also saw a great shift of pickup from pre-COVID levels to post-COVID levels, because everybody was moving now from the old traditional mechanism of procuring their requirements to moving completely online. So these are some of the interesting shifts that we have seen between the pre-COVID, during COVID. Of course, COVID has not ended, so can't even say post-COVID, but since lockdown is slightly easing up everywhere, that's where we are. Coming to what we were discussing earlier, Vadam teas, very interesting. Vadam is a very popular brand in the US. So voted and very sought for by Oprah Winfrey as one of her top 20 popular brands that she uses. And Vatam made a niche for itself in a space out there in the Western world, and is now pivoting the whole thing back in India. Of course, just started doing it on a larger scale pre-COVID, but due to COVID, it's just kind of a little bit going slow now.
Yeah. So what's the name of the company again? Sorry, I didn't catch it.
Vadam Teas.
So they are pivoting. They are US-based company.
Yeah, they're actually an India-based company, because they exist in the very favored premium tea niche market. Okay. Very, very efficacy-based. They took it to US first. They have quite a following there. You should try out their turmeric latte.
Oh, I love teas. Please.
Oh, you do? All right. Yeah. And of course, in order to, so from US would move to Europe, and eventually would also move to India too.
Yeah, I would like to know more about that startup. Let's talk offline.
Sure.
Something my favorite. Thank you, Nimisha. Sean, so after that, I'd like to know, I mean, For you, what has changed in terms of institutional and private equity investments? Obviously, investors are a little reluctant to release that funds, or reluctant to go aggressive. Valuations obviously are not that high pre-COVID that we used to be. So what's the investor sentiments? How that sentiments has affected the institutional and private equity investments in generally during these times?
Honestly, what I'm seeing from the investor community that we're dealing with, if you're looking at some of like the green capitals, eco VCs, and micro traction, there's a few other ones locally that we have an amazing relationship with. But generally, a lot of us are going back into a research mode. Ingressive Capital, for example. Make sure I'm not giving away any secret sauce or anything, but we had to spend a lot of time going back and kind of understanding what the market is going to look like. So on one side, we had a quota. We had a definite number of investments that we wanted to make every single month. We had said this to our LPs and everybody in the fund, and there was an expectation. So we were having to go back to, and let me give a little bit of background. So Ingressive in many ways is a feeder fund to other people. So for your Y Combinator invested in us, the Nigerian Sovereign Wealth Fund, there are a few other big names, again, 500 startups, some of those. But basically they wanted to engage, they saw the potential in the African market, but they didn't necessarily understand how to plug in or what to do. So an easy way to kind of try out the market was basically to say, all right, we're gonna give you guys some funding. You kind of help us spearhead and do the due diligence and different things like that and make investments. And for those who gain traction, you can pass them on to us. So we kind of had to go back and have a conversation and say like, hey, look, we don't necessarily feel comfortable just jumping out, because basically if you looked at how COVID was spreading and how it was jumping into different places, technically the African continent was last. So what everybody was saying is that the wave is coming, the wave is coming, the wave is coming, kind of like Noah. That effect. The flood is coming. So it's kind of like we're still in many ways waiting for the flood. And again, we just kind of had to go and crunch a bunch of numbers and look at a bunch of potential situations and variables into how this is affecting markets in different countries and different sectors, regions, and whatnot. So we just had to kind of have that conversation. Well, look, let's hold up, let's wait, let's spend more time looking at how COVID is impacting our current portfolio companies and let that start to inform our decisions going forward. And when we looked around, we were, people are making, when people make big investments, of course, they're going to announce it. So we saw a sharp decline in the announcements of companies being invested in just within our personal network and our personal community. So people are definitely within the African continent far more apprehensive when it comes to deploying funding in this short-term period. We're seeing, again, a lot of research and just pulling apart everybody's business model to see, is it actually COVID proof? What type of technologies do you have within your infrastructure that would allow you to expand? We kind of looked away from manufacturing to a certain extent because there was a heavy investment in an infrastructure that you would need. So we kind of again we weren't touching it before, but now we were kind of just like completely hands off. Like if you don't have certain elements in place, we can't. There's nothing. You're just going to go through it, and there's nothing anybody can do. Another pivot that we made as far as like our investment strategy was in the beginning when edutech, there were a lot of edutech companies that were saying like, hey, we want to teach people, we want to do this. And on the inside, we felt amazing. Like, yes, this is needed. This is necessary. But our money was not necessarily for that. Just keep in mind that a lot of these edutech companies, they had a lot to say as far as social impact and how they help people. But again, that's a hard conversation to have from a VC perspective, where there's an expectation of raising funds and different things like that. And then all of a sudden the entire world falls apart and we're like, hey, remember when you were talking to us about edutech? Come on back over. So like, you're kind of seeing those shifts. If you're looking at it, like now, like Princeton and Harvard and all of these amazing people that wanted to tell you that you needed to pay $100,000 for our pristine campus and all of our different things. Now they're like, oh, no, it's okay. You can still give us $100, but $100,000 a year, but just log in online. And people are like, no, that's not how this works. So in many ways, like COVID is kind of like, it's forcing people to kind of integrate technology into their core business models. Again, we would be looking at companies, and if you weren't tech enabled, we could look at you and say like, if you were tech enabled, that would be an added plus that would take you further. At this point, it's like, if you're not tech enabled, if you don't have certain types of tech integration in your business model, you will not survive going forward, because now they've created the habit. It takes 3 weeks to create a habit. Now we've been in lockdown for about 4 months, 3 months, or whatever, depending on where you are. Now, there are some very ingrained habits now. Shopping has changed. Amazon has exploded. It has created the first trillionaire. And it's a definite proof that buying habits have changed. And now, as a result, our investment habits will change as well. Please I'll talk too much. I'll just.
No. I really like your points when you mentioned that habits, it takes 3 weeks to change a habit. Mm-hmm. And when you're forced to change something, because the whole world is forced to be locked down in their respective countries, you psychologically, mentally prepare yourself for that change. Like, I never used to buy anything online, especially when it comes to my clothing. I would just go try it out. You love that, right? Even there's a long queue, massive queue, you would just love to be there, hanging around with friends, trying it out and everything else before you purchase it. But now things have changed. A lot of things have changed, even groceries. I never used to buy them online. I mean, people do.
Especially groceries. Yes.
Singapore is a tiny island, and I love to go out and, shop around things. So a lot of things has changed. We were forced to change ourselves, so which is great points. And education technology, I also like to add here, education, like higher education, is a very expensive affair everywhere, But with COVID-19, we can still have that education sitting at the comfort of our rooms online. Why do I have to pay that $100,000 to a university? To your point,
If the information is available online, and it was always available online, then technically all I'm waiting for is somebody to validate the education that I've amassed. At this point now, you have to give me fair credence to say that, like, okay, you can be educated online. I can technically now give certain value if you have a degree from DeVry or whatever, online community college or whatever the case may be, because there's no monopoly on information. Nobody can control information. So you have to respect Harvard, but you also have to respect backwater Country Hills Community College online to a certain extent.
Absolutely. No, you're right. Absolutely. Got it, Sean. The level playing, yeah. Thank you, Sean. We'll come back to you with more questions. Nimisha, your thoughts on the question?
So I'm glad Sean actually digressed the topic to online education. I feel online education is one way of democratizing the way education can be imparted anywhere in this world. It just gives so much of equalness to the different stratas of people, studying in different levels of colleges, whether it's a high-end university or it's somebody sitting out there in a smaller town getting that same kind of education. So, for me, online education will change the way the country as well as the world understands and absorbs information. And the more we support companies who are out there doing this, like in India, we have one of the largest players is somebody called Baiju, who I think every investor in this world has put their hands into Baiju's now, larger investors, because one sees the sheer potential of taking the digital content in one go to like 100 billion people, right? Or whatever is the number of students out here. And which is of an equal quality, which is of an equal value, and doesn't really differentiate at all between two people being imparted with that kind of education. So definitely going to change the way the world is going to look at it. Yes.
Yeah, totally. I mean, with the lockdown in India, I hear that schools are still not open.
No, not yet open at all. Unlike Singapore, schools in India are still shut down. Yes.
Yeah. So students are now studying online.
Yes, yes. A lot of them are studying online, and really the challenge for the government is to how do you get the schools of the middle level and the low level strata to have computers or phones to access that same level of online education. But they're creatively playing their way around. You know what they do? Quite a few of them have started showing it on your TV channels. They just introduced an add-on TV channel who just keeps on playing different sections, different subjects onto the TV for learning. But it's going to be tough to get all of them on the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think the younger generation, it's a little hard to make them sit on a
Yes.
online session, and unless there are parents with them. But with secondary students, secondary school students, or like those who are in their college or universities, I think it's a quite convenient medium to study. I think. I mean, I think the whole entire world is going to see a shift in higher education eventually. Just
Yes.
like conferences, we can just have conferences online.
Yeah.
Similarly, higher education, you know doesn't stop. Education world shouldn't stop if something like this happen. That's what I'm saying.
But it makes a lot of sense if it's going to also bring down the cost of education, right? Uh,
Absolutely, that's the
because
whole point.
you're beating
Yes.
the purpose, right? Your infrastructure is eliminated today. Instead of covering 30 kids in one classroom, you're covering 300 kids at one go if the need is right.
Yeah.
So the cost of education definitely, especially in countries like India, or I'm not sure at your end, Sean, how it works, but it really helps if you can impart quality education and bring the cost down too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. All
Um,
right.
I think you touched on some really important things. I think what COVID has done in many ways is, of course, obviously, it has highlighted the differences in the socioeconomic statuses in different places that are in close proximity to each other. But it's also kind of exposed some, I don't want to say lies, let's say stretches of the truth regarding how to best educate large populations of people. Now, with Ingressive for Good, our goal as a foundation was to strike down as far to the bottom of the pyramid as possible to expand the total accessible market for those people who want to plug in tech products and different things like that. If you want to sell, let's say, Microsoft Azure or something of that effect, it would help if people understood what it actually does. And a lot of these tech companies are kind of playing the long game to kind of bring people on board and different things like that. But again, for us, we started in 2018, the Q2, Q3 of 2018, shifting our entire community online. We stopped doing in-person meetups. We stopped kind of funding certain things and kind of directed our funding towards making these things available online. And now what you're starting to see, like, again, we have an amazing relationship with Coursera where we're basically supporting people without jobs, 5,000 people without jobs. Coursera is able to give this thing away for free because now they're playing that long-term game that we saw Microsoft, Google, and some of these other people playing, which is we're going to give you something for free to kind of get you used to learning on these platforms. Now, those people who are able to basically have an organized approach to learning, be able to find different.
Yeah, sure. I think Sean, we have lost you. Or is it me? Nimisha, can you?
No, he's gone into pause mode.
Yes, I think we've lost him. He's frozen on us. Sorry, it's okay. So, Nimisha, while we get back Sean online, I think he's back. Sean, hi. You there? Can you see us?
Sorry. Yes, the bad part about connecting to your phone's internet is people call you. But there are problems in the continent, but we're working feverishly to solve them. And it's par for the course. These are all opportunities. But yes, again, they've just exposed amazing ways. They've exposed half truths when it comes to educating. People can do it for far cheaper. They can do it way more efficiently. And now we're starting to see amazing startups who are being validated by force through the situations that we're living in now.
Right. Thank you, Sean. I'll come back to you because Amisha has obviously got another meeting lined up, I guess, and she's going to be leaving soon. So
Okay.
I have time to 16. No problem. Yeah.
You have? Okay, cool.
15.
15. Okay, cool.
Yes,
Don't worry. So yeah, Nimesh, I have a interesting question for both of you. Actually, we spoke about education tech, like how the industry has shifted from offline to online. What about work? Like the daily work. We used to go to offices. We used to have used to go into big buildings with a lot of infrastructure and everything else. You know, how do you think is that going to change eventually?
I miss office.
Yeah, I know we all
Yeah.
do.
Yes. So I think it's to mention a point which Sean mentioned some time back. When a habit is forced on you, you actually adapt to it in 3 weeks. Whereas
Yes.
if it's left open, you may never adapt to it at all. So it's been kind of a roller coaster journey throughout this entire lockdown period, where one has to manage work from home and working from home types. And I feel the biggest contributor to all of this has been digitization and tech both. Had these platforms not been available, it was impossible to carry on the way the entire world is carried on, staying all locked up away at home. This just the simple infrastructure has helped everyone realize a couple of things. Like in India, we're actually seeing companies now thinking through whether we should change work cultures from doing at least 40% work from home for larger companies, of course. So 40% work from home because it seems to be working well. Efficiency is there, processes are already in place. Do I really need a 300-seater office, or can I manage with a 200-seater office, right? Commercial real estate really has taken an entire dip because of this, for sure.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
as
Sure.
far as the personal experience is concerned, I think it's taught us a lot of things. It's taught us how to juggle between these two different elements to get that same efficiencies out. And other than the touch and feel, which all of us miss, right? It's nice to take a cup of coffee and stand with your mates in office. Um, I think work-wise, with all the infrastructures in place, yes, yeah, it's been fine. I think people have gotten used to it. Yes.
Yeah, I think after 6 months of, I think 5 months of lockdown here, I've sort of gotten used to be speaking with people online now. I mean,
Yes.
initially there was hiccups like, what's this? I mean, this is getting, I mean, what's that word called? Like burnout. You felt like, too much fatigue, too much Zoom fatigue, but now you realize this is the norm. This is the new norm, and you have to get used to like 3 weeks. Yes. Uh, so, Sean, I would like to ask you, like, with relation to work shifting home virtually, what about the security aspect to it? Because we had a lot of like the Twitter hack issue where the accounts got hacked and everything else. When it comes to financial institutions, how do you think that's going to evolve? Because obviously, it's very difficult for somebody who is working in a financial sector like a bank, where a lot of data is involved. Security becomes a major issue, and working from home, how do you see that's going to work out?
So you've touched on so many different key points. And also Nimisha touched on it as well. Like the way we envision work has completely changed. It will never be seen as the same again due to the fact that people are able to save so much money right now. Um, I have talked to no less than 12 or 13 different businesses that have just decided to completely cancel having office buildings. So now I'm looking at now just what this looks like 6 to 10 months from now when I drive through downtown Lagos and I see all of these really, really tall buildings that are basically created for office space where they're not going to get those people back. You have another instance, and I think in India you can maybe account for this depending on where you are as well. But basically, traffic and productivity and all these different things that people are realizing that it would be cheaper for me to support you having the capacity to work from home than it would be supporting you going back and forth and all of those things that happen. If you're talking about accidents, if you're talking about theft, if you're talking about being late, if you're talking about the maintenance of like all these different things that come into play that now do not have to, people do not really have to worry about. So again, it has completely upended the way we do work. Now, I myself have worked from home for the last 2 years. I rather enjoy it. And now I feel like people are kind of breaking into my space. I feel like they're kind of, I was ahead of the curve for a minute. So basically, there was no way that I was going to jump into traffic. And if you're driving somewhere at 4 o'clock in the morning in Lagos, a 15-minute drive at 4 o'clock in the morning will take you 3 hours at rush hour or more. So you're looking at this exponential amount of time that is just devoted to basically people working. And if you can imagine, some people, I know people who travel 4 to 6 hours one way to get to work, and are exhausted, ran down, and then you have to realize that you work an 8-hour day and you're traveling for 8 hours a day. So basically you're only going home to sleep. What type of productivity, what type of mindset, what type of balance does this employee have? What type of quality of life do they have? And I think that people are really able to look through these work tools, look at these different things that are available now that in a different light. So I don't want to give somebody a free product placement until they pay me. But there's this one specific project management tool that I am personally able to manage 5 different companies and almost 300 different employees by basically just looking at my computer screen and saying, you're on time, you're late, why? You're late, why? And just basically managing somebody's other companies just like this. I have made a lot of money in COVID doing operational, basically just operations consulting, showing people how to basically bring their business online. From the financial aspects of it, which is technically sorry, I took such a long route around, but the financial aspects of it are that people cannot leave their house. People are having a hard time understanding how to make money in COVID. So as far as the financial impacts of it, there is the awareness on the security side, but I think in many ways we haven't even gotten to that concern yet in some of the key places where you're looking at bringing in certain influencers who are going to say this is a problem. There's a lot of bigger problems that have to be solved before we get to that one. Now, again, I am seeing some interesting things here and there with mentions of cybersecurity, and I know a few people who are doing some really cool things to make sure that are technically their business is increasing, but I'm still waiting to see what is that new thing that's going to kind of change the way we secure our conversations, our exchange of information online, and all these different things. Because you mentioned Twitter being hacked, but also Zoom accounts are being hacked. You have people ghosting and basically jumping into your Zoom meeting and locking it or coming and doing ridiculous things within there. There's a lot there. This is a very interesting time for the tech space. I've never been so happy to be in this tech space because I came into it for a different reason. And now that I'm here, it's just like I am basically the tip of the spear, especially if you're looking at the African continent, which has the youngest the youngest population within anywhere else in the world. And also, like, basically my job is to onboard them, to get them to participate in global technology. So it's a very exciting time to be alive.
Great. Thank you, Sean. If Nimisha, if you don't have anything else to add on to that, then can I have a different question for Sean, because I think crypto. I'm sure, like, yeah, because let's talk about crypto a bit.
Okay.
Okay, so Sean, like, I want to ask you, what's the biggest myth about cryptocurrencies?
I'm not quite sure what the biggest myth is. I guess I don't know. I don't necessarily. So let's just say I may not know what the myth is. So how about I bounce this back at you and give you some feedback that I've seen from people here. And number one, one of the major things that I've heard is that the currency is too volatile for people to make it an investment in it. I've heard so many people say that coming into the cryptocurrency space now, especially if you're looking at Bitcoin as your North Star, you're basically too late. There's a lot of distrust. Again, we mentioned cybersecurity before, so people are very much so afraid of things being stolen or losing access to them. So these are the major concerns when I'm trying to convince somebody like, hey, cryptocurrency is something that's interesting. I'll touch into this probably a little bit later, depending on, maybe we'll have another follow-up question, but basically we had this very, very insightful debate. We had let's say a firehouse chat or a roundtable discussion where we invited all the major cryptocurrency and digital fiat players in the space to have a debate to see who is more positioned to lead the future of digital currencies. So we brought in the likes of like InterSwitch, we brought in Luno. There were just a couple of different people that we brought in and had these amazing conversations. There were some people from Facebook when they were looking at launching the Libra. So again, we had some amazing conversations, but again, people do understand what it is, And a lot of people who are not connected to technology are deathly afraid. But then you have to realize that, again, why we're so engaged with the youth in this continent and in this country is that Nigeria, for example, is one of the strongest cryptocurrency markets in the world. It's showing so much growth month over month over month, because basically there is a huge problem of being able to securely transfer funds from one place to another. You have so many different instances where if you're looking at the borders where, okay, if you're Nigeria, you have Ghana on this side, Benin on this side, they may have two completely different rules or rates or different things as far as like transferring funds, whereby dropping in cryptocurrencies, you're able to kind of bypass some of these rules, regulations, and different things like that, which I believe it's definitely needed.
That's
your question. I'm so sorry.
Actually, volatility is a concern for many mainstream investors as well, including retail investors, because I hear from people, oh, Bitcoin, the value keeps on fluctuating a lot for me to take the risk. So yeah, you're totally right. But with the unbanked population, be it Africa, be it Latin America, be it India, there's a lot of unbanked population where they do not have access to the banking because they do not have any data to be able to validate before they can open an account. So with a mobile phone and internet, I think you can download a wallet and probably store your crypto and transact it. I mean, I was speaking to somebody from Brazil a couple of sessions before, and he lives off Bitcoin in Brazil. So that was an incredible disclosure about Bitcoin, about crypto, how it can be used on a daily basis as well. Because we say you can buy pizza, you can buy coffee, but we haven't seen the real use cases. With Africa, as you rightly said, it's a big market. As long as people start believing in it, people start trusting in it, and I think it's more about the community supporting the fact that there's a lot of benefits for the people as a whole.
Let me give you this one. This is a really interesting fact. So I love saying this. I hate painting the continent in a negative light. And I love when I'm able to kind of show the positive sides of Africa where they're kind of leading the way in certain space. And when it comes to remittance technology, Africa technically is, in my opinion, is far ahead of everywhere else. And I say that from the perspective of, if you're familiar with the M-Pesa in Kenya, so basically, M-Pesa in Kenya was the one maybe over 10 years ago, who were basically using USSD, basically basic text messages and different things to do banking across borders and different things like that. Well, not across borders, but basically financial transactions. If you look at this space now, I don't know if it's M-Pesa still, but they handle a huge amount of the GDP of Kenya. A lot of it's going through that space. You also have to look at the fact that from needs to solve a problem here that's not currently being solved. So maybe in America, cryptocurrency would make a bit more sense based on how mature their market is, but in a different way. But within the African continent, we found, again, M-Pesa, using mobile phone companies to be able to start creating wallets and transacting and doing different things like this. We are looking now at this point for cryptocurrency to solve a new problem or to solve a problem that isn't currently being solved. And I think that's what we're looking to extrapolate from cryptocurrency.
Yeah, absolutely. You need a problem statement before you can solve. Great. Thank you, Sean, for sharing those thoughts. Nimisha, I hope you are not getting bored. You still love crypto.
Hearing him out. It's very interesting, yes, but not my area of expertise.
Yeah. So I have an interesting question for you. I think you are the best place to answer that. What are the best practices as a VC you follow when you invest? Maybe seed round, seed and post-seed for the startups.
So actually, as a VC, we don't invest in seed. We would rather, so we would rather let the promoter figure out his basic business model that he wants to go with, because when one is experimenting, you would kind of keep running around that model till you eventually realize this is what I want to do. So we don't invest at the seed stage or the boardroom stage. We would rather that they conceptualize the idea in their mind, do like a proof of concept out there in the market, and then come to us for from a pre-series stage angle. And the reason to do that is because we want to enter in their life cycle at a stage where it makes sense for them to utilize that growth capital. So we give $3 to $4 million per portfolio company, and that's quite a lot of money, right? So one has to understand whether the business model and the proof of concept is proven itself out there to then reach a stage where scalability should not have any fear, right? Then you should be able to go bang on, utilize this to take you to that next level of growth stage that you would want to look at.
Yeah. So what are your advice when you are investing into?
When we invest, there are 3-4 aspects that we would want to look at always. The most important aspect is the founder in whom we are investing.
Right.
The EQ, the IQ, the thought process of the founder is very, very important for us to understand whether he grasps the space, because spaces will keep evolving and disruption and changes are so quick today as compared to 5 years back that one has to assess whether the founder has a capability to pivot and go where it needs to, right?
Right.
So that is one of the things. Second is the space. The space either has to be large enough for incumbents and disruptors to exist and coexist to make some meaningful sense, or it has to be white spaces, niche spaces, which generally don't coexist in that particular sector.
Right. So it's about the founders pivoting, agility of the founders that you look at mostly before you invest. Okay, great. Thank you, Nimisha. So, Sean, yes.
Just say, if I were to add a point, I would say for Ingressive, externally, we run a VC. Internally, it feels more like an incubator and a market research company. That's what the conversations internally for us sound like. That was all.
Oh, okay. All right. Great. So I've got another question. I would like to know during these times, we talk about a lot of pivot cases, like people have shifted from offline to online, but what kind of new products we see emerging because of this pandemic? What have you seen? Like something like didn't exist, but has emerged because of the pandemic?
Can I share related to education?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, since that's one of the core topics. So we have this company called Eupheus Learning, which basically is old school classroom curriculum textbooks to around 5,000 schools in India. The minute lockdown was announced and everybody realized, and schools realized that they have to shift to online, they came up with this fantastic model of online classrooms with some kind of tech development team at their end that just gave access to schools instantaneously, along with e-copies of the textbooks. Because today, even the students could not go and access textbooks because all the bookstores were closed. So here you are sitting at a period when actually the schools should have opened up, and then nothing is available for you to impart that kind of education. Classrooms, e-textbooks became really great partnership for the schools, which the company provided, which has helped them to kind of have a feel as if it's school as normal with the students. We feel that the company really pivoted to that extent in wanting to establish great partnerships with the schools that it was working with. And along with that, of course, then kept introducing math, English, assessment tests, and so on and so forth. And even coding for that matter, the hottest topic, right, nowadays.
Yeah. So great. I mean, the new product would be the e-classrooms. I mean, who would have thought about e-classrooms before?
Yeah, amazing. I sat through one of them. It actually takes attendance. It actually even helps the teacher through assessment papers. And the teacher doesn't have to sit and correct assessment papers because they are all your MCQ kind of multiple choice questions kind of papers. And the results are instantaneous again. I think it's quite exciting to see how such a classroom is getting conducted.
Yeah, yes. Of course. I'd love to see that as well. Thank you, Nimisha. Sean, do you have anything to add? Any new products which has you've seen emerged from your portfolio companies or startups that you have, or outside the space, outside the portfolio that you have, something new that has really amazed you?
I would say, okay, so this is one, it's not necessarily in our portfolio company. And I won't go into the conversations being had at this moment, but one of my favorites is a company called Gradely. What I like about Gradely...
Sean, sorry to interrupt you for a bit. Nimisha really is feeling bad because she has to leave and she has to say bye. Bye, Nimisha.
Sorry to interrupt your conversation, but Sean, it was a pleasure connecting. I'm going to drop a LinkedIn invite to you. Let's stay connected. Thanks, Sony, and I'm sorry to be doing this. I happen to have an overlap, but I didn't want to miss this conversation too.
Thank you so much for your time, even though you're busy today. Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Much. Bye.
Bye.
Awesome. All right. So Gradely is one of my favorites. Again, the reason why it's my favorite is that it takes into account the period that we're looking at now, where students aren't necessarily going to school. And it's those younger students that that are going to give the biggest problem to the parents. They can't watch themselves, they have to be engaged, they have to learn all these different things to make sure they don't get left behind. So what I liked about Gradely is that it was available for those in K, which in the US terms, K is like kindergarten, which is 5 years old upwards. So they take you from 5 years old to a high school senior. But basically my favorite part about it is that the whole learning part is data driven, where it's kind of giving, after you're taking tests and different things like that, it's actually giving you suggestions to tell you areas where you should shore up your learning. So it's kind of like this tailor-made learning that automatically makes itself fit the learner. That given where we are now with all of this learning and different things taking place online, the ability to be able to tailor fit it to the learner, I think is going to be it's next level, in my opinion.
Okay, so tailor-made, did you say tailor-made, what was that? I missed out. Like somebody makes a mistake. Hi, Sean, I think I've lost you. Hi.
Apologies, people. Yeah, it's data driven, meaning basically after you kind of get the test or take certain things, it's going to basically suggest areas where you should go back and relearn, or where you should go and study and different things like that.
Artificial intelligence based.
Exactly. Right. Yes. Machine learning and AI. Yes. And again, now what you're starting to see is machine learning, and given with this online access to learning, is going to make technically this platform maybe more efficient and more impactful than being in the classroom in the first place. Because again, the teacher can't talk to each student to understand what your particular needs are. They have to apply the lesson to everybody, and maybe apply some different time here and there, but there's limits. So this to me is the future of learning online, or learning in general.
Right. Sean, because we have some time now that it's just between you and me, I just want to know about what do you think about this platform? Because the VCTV, the Venture Capital TV, is basically connecting speakers who are into venture capital funding, startups who are looking for funding as well. So what do you think you can add value besides speaking and sharing knowledge? I mean, I really want to know, because we have some time now between you and me. Sure. So I just want to know your thoughts.
What I love about this is every single time that I've been able to speak on the platform, I've always been able to have like a follow-up conversation with somebody who may be who may know more about certain things in a different space than I do. And when I say that, I mean basically is that as far as the emerging tech space in the African continent, either A, I'd probably be as knowledgeable as a lot of people you would come across, or B, I have their phone number. So in that space, I would be very useful here. But now I'm finding my own versions in different pockets all over the world, in different areas of focus. So it's building this, for me, it's helping me build this global network of people who are already open and amenable to how can I help, how can I inform you, how can I give you information, where can I plug you in at, where technically this thing for me that started as, hey, let me give my perspective on how things are working in the African continent. Now I find myself like, hey, what's going on over here in Turkey? What's going on in this space in Singapore? I'm able to now just reach out to people that I never would have met, never would have talked to, and build these amazing relationships. And you guys do a really good job. I don't know how you vet people, but you do a really good job of finding people with this type of very open, helpful personality.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. That means a lot because that's the whole purpose of these sessions. We don't want to be just, live streaming it for the sake of it. We want people who are viewing our sessions, something to take back, something tangible, which can they use in their daily lives
Mhm.
to better themselves or to learn something. That's the whole idea of these sessions. I have one other question. When it comes to startups are the ones who are badly hit because of the pandemic, because obviously they are, burn rate is there, the business doesn't come in, there are no sales happening, but they still have people they have to pay, a lot of burn rate. So what are your advice to build a sustainable business in future for these startups scale and still attract the needed investment that is required?
Um, what I think there's no silver bullet here. There's no like simple answer where you can tell somebody this is what you do and everything will be okay. Because the again, in a lot of different capacities, the world as we know it has changed. And the people that we would typically depend on to give us insight or give us leadership and guidance have no more insight than anyone else. You're looking for somebody who was in an advanced tech space in 1918 when the Spanish flu was around to be able to tell you this is this is what I saw when we were flying non-electronic airplanes out of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, or like whatever it is, like it's a different time and space now. But what I am telling people is that now is a great time to be honest, open, and transparent. Now is an amazing time to say, I don't necessarily know what's going to happen in the future, but this is what I am doing now. These are some of the observations and feedback. Again, now what we are finding is that a lot of portfolio companies or smart portfolio companies will be picking who their investors are based on kind of how they can support them, what they can provide for them, where they can plug them into different spaces. So now you kind of see the role reversing in some aspects because now the investors are coming to the business like, what's going on? What do you see? Tell me. So we're kind of leaning on them in some capacities, again, to give us information. So again, it'd be very smart for these startups to again be paying attention and collecting data in an organized fashion and start reaching out to people or start sharing information. Don't wait till people are coming looking for you. Another thing is just be extra super tight about your finances. Everybody is expected to take a loss, but we don't expect you to say like, you have to know why you lost the money. You have to know why you're burning through your funds. And you can't just look and say, oh, well, it's COVID because the world is falling apart. There are no supply chains anymore. So now I don't have money. It's like, that's not good enough. You're gonna have to dig a little bit deeper. You have to understand, you're gonna have to tell us how COVID has impacted you. You're gonna have to tell us like, again, now, and then when you tell us how it's impacted you, now you have to tell me again, now, how are you going to respond?
Absolutely.
Again, we are finding it more difficult to find investment worthy companies, again, because we're still trying to understand the marketing. We know they are as well. But again, those companies are now becoming far less responsive. In many ways, they're becoming far less confident to the point where they're not necessarily so willing to even ask for funding in the first place. Some of them, we obviously know that their valuation has tanked and they know this may not be the right time for them to raise money to get the shares the way they want it balanced. But outside of that, again, companies are just, they don't know one way for another. And I think people have to grasp the unknown. You have to fully hug on to the fact that you don't know what's going on and just be aware of what you do know and share that.
Yeah. Correct. I mean, you have to embrace the unknown and uncertainty and move on, keep moving. I mean, don't stop. Yes. This is my, advice to all the founders out there is times of uncertainty for everybody in the world. So just keep moving with the pace that you could, and speak to your investors, speak to your mentors, speak to your advisors. Please keep the communication open. So before we go, Sean, we just have a few more minutes. What are your last closing remarks for the show?
My last closing remarks are, I would say I'm happy and honored to be on here. I love what you guys are doing. Again, you already asked a few questions that gave insight into why I'm so excited to be here and why I'm excited in general. But I would definitely start as far as the investors that are following you. I would definitely be open to conversations to talk about what investment looks like in the African continent. That's something I want people to kind of start really, really getting in their mind. It was seen as a very dangerous place. It was seen as there was a gap in trust when it comes to doing business within the African continent. And again, that's why we managed ourselves. We basically started building infrastructure around our deal flow, where again, when we invest in somebody, in certain cases, we know their parents, and we basically have been talking to these people for the last 2 or 3 years. Like, we know these people, we know where they're going, we know their journey, their truth, and their path. So again, those are some of the kind of the key areas. Like, let's just like re-envision how we connect in a different way, with all of these holes in supply chains and different things like that. Let's look at ways the African continent can kind of start filling those gaps.
Absolutely. Sure. We will, let's have another discussion after this and see how we can collaborate and help each other out in these times. So it was fantastic to have you on the show today. Love the energy. Love the energy. Nimisha has left us, unfortunately. She had another meeting, but she loved it. She's going to be back again on the show. This brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for watching us. And if you like the show and you want to be a part of the show as a speaker, please go and visit our website, www.laltoken.com/events. We run the sessions Monday till Friday on various topics centered around investments primarily. Anything that is of interest to you or you think you can add value, please reach out to one of us, be it Maria, myself, and we kind of happy to have you on our session to share views. Thank you for making it fun. Thank you for making it engaging. We will always love to have you. Thank you, Sean, for your time today. Take care, stay safe, stay connected, and speak to you later. Thank you. Bye.